Sometimes, the people who smile the brightest in front of you are the ones sharpening the knife behind your back. Zella had woken up early that morning, excited to make the evening special. She cooked all of Chemo's favorite dishes: spiced fish, soft yam, and the sweet cake he loved. Bina had been staying with them for weeks, and Zella thought a nice dinner would bring everyone closer. She set the table carefully, placing the plates neatly, adding candles for a warm glow. Her heart felt light. She imagined them eating together, talking and laughing like family should. When the food was ready, she wiped her hands and walked toward the living room to call them. But as she reached the doorway, she stopped. They hadn't seen her yet. Her name floated through the air, spoken in a tone that didn't sound right. Then came a sharp burst of laughter. It was Bina's voice, teasing, almost cruel. Zila froze where she stood, just out of sight, her hand resting on the wall. Something inside her told her not to step in just yet. The laughter continued, and though she couldn't see their faces, she could hear the joy in their voices. Only it wasn't the kind that warmed the heart. It was the kind that cut deep. Her stomach tightened. The dinner she had been so proud of suddenly felt heavy in her hands. Even though she wasn't carrying anything, she didn't know exactly what they were laughing about yet, but her body already sensed it wasn't good. The smell of the food she'd cooked drifted through the room, but no one noticed. They were too busy enjoying whatever joke she wasn't part of, whatever joke was about her. Zella stood there, silent, her heartbeat getting louder. Something in the air had shifted, and she knew in that moment that tonight would not be the night of love and closeness she had imagined. It would be the night that changed everything. Zila pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing, afraid they would hear her. Her sister's voice came clearly, dripping with mockery. "She really thinks you married her for love? Poor stupid Zila." The words pierced her like a knife. For a moment, she thought she had misheard, but then Chemo's low chuckle followed, sealing the truth she didn't want to believe. "She's useful for now. Once we have what we need, she'll be easy to replace." Her body went cold from head to toe. The man she had trusted, the man she'd given her heart to, was speaking about her as if she were nothing more than a tool, and her own sister, her blood, was laughing at the thought. It felt like the walls were closing in on her. The people she loved most were tearing her apart behind her back, and she was close enough to hear every word. Her mind began racing, flipping through memories like pages in a book. She thought about the nights Chemo held her hand and told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. She remembered the days Bina leaned on her for support, crying about her own troubles, and how Zila had comforted her without hesitation. Now, those moments felt poisoned. Every smile, every hug, every "I love you" suddenly looked like a mask they had worn to keep her blind. The floor seemed to shift under her feet, and she had to hold the wall for balance. She could feel her heartbeat in her ears, but not in a way that made her feel alive, only in a way that made her feel betrayed. She wanted to burst in, scream, demand answers, but her voice was trapped somewhere deep inside her chest. The shock was too heavy to lift. In that moment, she realized something she had never allowed herself to think before. Love could be a lie, and trust could be a trap. Chemo's words weren't just careless. They were calculated. "Once we have what we need," he had said, as if her worth was measured by something other than who she was. And Bina, instead of defending her, had joined in, enjoying the cruelty. Zila's eyes stung, but she refused to let tears fall where they might hear her. She stayed hidden, her body still, listening to the sound of their voices fading into casual chatter, as if what they had just said meant nothing. But to her, it meant everything. It meant the life she thought she had was gone. She turned away quietly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The dinner she had prepared no longer mattered. The warmth she had planned to share had turned to ice. In a single moment, everything she believed about her marriage, her sister, and her life had shattered into pieces she could never put back together. Zella stood there for a moment longer, letting their voices fade behind her. Every part of her wanted to storm in, slam the table, and scream at them for what they had said. But something inside her, something colder, stronger, held her still. She knew if she went in now, her anger would only give them more power. They would twist her words, deny everything, and make her look like the crazy one. No, she thought, not tonight. Tonight, she would choose silence, but not the kind they expected. She turned away from the doorway and walked back toward the kitchen. her steps slow and steady. Each one felt like it carried a new weight. Her hands were trembling, but she curled them into fists until the shaking stopped. She wouldn't let them see her break. Tears pressed hard against her eyes, but she blinked them away. They would not get the satisfaction of her pain. As she entered the kitchen, the warm smell of the food she had cooked now felt like a cruel reminder of the love she had been giving freely to people who didn't deserve it. She placed the serving spoons down carefully, wiped the edge of the table, and took a deep breath. In that moment, she began to plan. She thought about what she had overheard, about how they saw her as useful for now. That meant they believed she had no control, no power of her own. They had no idea what she was capable of. A slow, quiet decision formed in her mind. She would leave their lives so completely that they would never recover from the loss, and she would do it without warning, without giving them a chance to prepare. She moved through the rest of the evening like nothing had happened. When they came into the dining room, she smiled politely, served them food, and listened to their empty small talk. On the outside, she looked calm, almost peaceful. On the inside, her thoughts were sharp and focused. She was already mapping out her next steps, what to take, what to leave, and when to disappear. It was strange, but as she sat there pretending to be the same Zella they thought they knew, she felt her fear slowly turn into a strange kind of strength. She realized that silence could be a weapon, and she was going to use it. She wouldn't give them the scene they expected. She wouldn't give them a warning. By the time the plates were cleared, she already knew she would never sit at this table with them again. The night they thought they had fooled her was the night she decided to end the game they had been playing all along, and she would end it without a single sound. Years before Zella met Chemo, her life had been very different. She was still finding her way in the world when her grandmother passed away, leaving her something precious, an inheritance that was more than just money. It included fertile land in the countryside, a small chest of pure gold her grandmother had kept hidden for decades, and a quiet fortune locked away in a trust fund. The trust had been set up in a way that only Zella could access it, and no one else, no matter their relationship to her, could touch it. Her grandmother had been wise. She had told Zella once, "Not all wealth should be shown. Sometimes it is safer in the shadows." Zella had taken those words to heart. She never told her friends, her extended family, or even the man she would later marry. She wanted to know that whoever chose to be in her life did so for her, not for the fortune that lay quietly waiting for. When Chemo came into her life, she thought she had found someone who truly cared for her. He wasn't flashy, and he seemed genuine. She believed his love was pure because he knew nothing of her hidden wealth. Even when they married, she never felt the need to tell him. In her mind, her grandmother's inheritance was a private gift, something to be kept safe until there was a true need for it. Over the years, there had been times when Zella almost told Chemo, when they faced small financial struggles, or when he spoke of future plans, but something always stopped her. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was her grandmother's voice still echoing in her heart. She kept the secret locked away, along with the documents, the trust details, and the key to the gold chest. Now, standing in the kitchen after hearing the betrayal from both her husband and her sister, she felt an unexpected wave of relief. They thought she was powerless, dependent on them, easy to manipulate. They had no idea she had more than enough to walk away and build an entirely new life without them. That hidden inheritance was no longer just money and property. It was her freedom. It meant she didn't have to beg, didn't have to explain, didn't have to stay. She could disappear and never look back. And best of all, they would never see it coming. Zella wiped her hands slowly on a towel, her mind steady. All this time, her silence about the inheritance had been for love. But now, that same silence was going to save her. While Chemo and Bina sat in the other room thinking they were in control, Zella knew the truth. The game had already shifted in her favor, and they were about to lose without even realizing it. The next morning, the sun had barely risen when Zella quietly got out of bed. She moved with care, making sure not to wake Chemo or Bina. Their laughter from the night before still echoed in her mind, but now it no longer hurt the same way. It fueled her. She pulled a small travel bag from the back of her wardrobe and began packing only what mattered: a few clothes, some important documents, and the small leather pouch her grandmother had given her years ago, the one that held the key to her gold chest. She glanced once at the closed bedroom door where Chemo and Bina were still sleeping. They had no idea that the woman they thought they controlled was about to step out of their reach completely. With her bag over her shoulder, Zella slipped quietly out of the house, her footsteps light on the pavement. Her destination was Mama Nari's office, a modest but dignified building at the edge of the city. Mama Nari had been her grandmother's closest friend, and the person her grandmother had trusted to oversee the inheritance. She was more than a lawyer. She was family in the truest sense of the word. When Zella entered, the older woman looked up from her desk, surprise flickering across her face at the early visit. "I'm ready to move the inheritance," Zella said softly, her voice steady, despite the storm inside her. Mama Nari studied her for a moment, her sharp eyes searching Zella's face. She didn't press for details, but her expression told Zella she already suspected the reason. Slowly, Mama Nari nodded. "And your husband?" she asked, her tone careful. Zella's jaw tightened. "He won't know until it's too late." That was all the explanation needed. Mama Nari pulled open a drawer and brought out a thick folder of papers. "Everything is still under your sole authority," she said, placing the documents in front of Zella. "We'll move the funds and property titles to new accounts only you can access. I'll also arrange for the gold to be transferred to a secure location." Zella signed where she needed to, her pen moving quickly but firmly. With each signature, she felt herself cutting another invisible tie to the life she had shared with Chemo. The more she signed, the lighter she felt. Mama Nari worked efficiently, making calls, sealing envelopes, and arranging meetings for the next few days. When it was done, Zella stood and hugged her. "Thank you," she said quietly. Mama Nari held her for a moment, then stepped back. "You're doing the right thing, child. Protect what's yours." As Zella left the office, the morning light felt different on her skin, brighter, warmer. She wasn't just walking away from betrayal, she was walking toward freedom, and this was only the first step. For the next 2 weeks, Zella became an actress in her own home. Every morning, she greeted Chemo with a soft smile and asked if he had slept well. She chatted with Bina over breakfast as if nothing had ever changed. She cooked their favorite meals, served them with care, and even laughed at their jokes. On the surface, she was the same Zella they thought they knew, obedient, trusting, and harmless. But beneath that calm mask, she was working quietly and steadily, preparing for the moment she would vanish from their lives. When Bina suggested they go shopping together, Zella agreed without hesitation. She walked through stores with her sister, helping her pick dresses, pretending to enjoy the day. She listened to Bina complain about small things, all while knowing that in just a short time, none of these conversations would matter. Her heart no longer reacted to their words. Her mind was focused on something much bigger. Each day, while Chemo was at work and Bina was busy elsewhere, Zella made quiet moves. She visited the bank to close joint accounts, transferring her portion into new ones only she could access. She met with Mama Nari again to sign the final documents that secured every piece of her grandmother's land, fully under her name. She arranged for the gold to be placed in a secure storage facility far from the city. She also cleared out her personal belongings, little by little. A few important clothes disappeared from her wardrobe. Her grandmother's jewelry box found its way into her bag one afternoon. She made sure no one noticed. If Chemo or Bina ever glanced into her things, everything looked as it always had. There were moments when she caught herself staring at them, wondering how they could laugh so easily in her presence after saying what they had said that night. But then she reminded herself, people like them believed they were untouchable. They thought she was blind, and she was happy to let them think so, at least until it no longer mattered. At night, when the house was quiet, she would sit in bed and go over her plan again and again. Every step was timed perfectly. Every document was ready. Every exit point was clear. She knew there would be no turning back once she made her move, so she wanted nothing left undone. Those 2 weeks were the longest she had ever lived, but also the most empowering. She learned how to hide her feelings, how to move without being noticed, and how to take control without raising suspicion. And when she looked at Chemo and Bina across the dinner table, she no longer saw family. She saw 2 people who were about to lose everything they thought they had over her. On a bright Saturday morning, Zella woke earlier than usual. The house was quiet, and the air felt lighter, as if it already knew she was leaving. She moved through the kitchen calmly, preparing breakfast just as she always did. Eggs, bread, and hot tea, exactly how Chemo liked it. She set the table neatly, making sure everything looked normal. Today was the day she had been planning for weeks, and she would not let even the smallest thing give her away. When the food was ready, she heard movement from the bedroom. Chemo walked in, rubbing his eyes, and Bina followed shortly after. Zila greeted them both with a warm smile, as though nothing in the world was wrong. She poured tea into their cups, asked about their plans for the day, and even laughed when Bina made a silly comment. Inside, her heart was steady. She had already said her real goodbyes days ago, in her own mind. After breakfast, Zella walked over to Chemo, leaned down, and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "I have a few errands to run," she said casually. He nodded without suspicion, already reaching for his phone. Bina didn't look up from her plate. Neither of them noticed the small travel bag, tucked neatly in the trunk of Zella's car, or the fact that she had been wearing the necklace her grandmother gave her, the one she only wore on important days. Once outside, Zella slid into the driver's seat and started the car. She didn't head toward the market or the bank. She drove straight to the airport, her hands steady on the wheel. Her ticket had been booked days before, her destination carefully chosen, a place far away where no one could find her unless she wanted them to. Her larger belongings had already been moved to her new home by trusted contacts. Today, she was just carrying what she needed to start fresh. The drive felt both long and short. Every street, every building she passed seemed like a chapter she was closing forever. When she reached the airport, she parked, stepped out with her bag, and walked through the glass doors without looking back. Back at the house, on the kitchen table where she had served breakfast, sat a single, folded note. Written in her neat handwriting, it read, "Thanks for teaching me the value of silence." No explanation, no goodbye, just the one sentence that carried the weight of everything she had discovered and everything she had decided. By the time Chemo and Bina would find it, Zella would already be far away, boarding a flight toward a life they could never touch. She had left behind more than just a home. She had left behind the person they thought they could control. By the time Chemo and Bina understood what had happened, it was already too late. Zella had quietly left the house before sunrise, carrying only a small bag and a calm smile. She traveled to another city, where Mama Nari was waiting for her in a small, warm office. Together, they signed the final papers that completed the transfer of Zela's inheritance. Money, land, and property that had once been tied to the family name, but was now fully under her control. Chemo and Bina had no idea where she had gone. When they noticed her absence, panic set in. They called her phone again and again, but it rang without an answer. They sent messages, short at first, then long and desperate, but the screen stayed silent. They reached out to her friends, asking if anyone had seen her, but every answer was the same. "No, we haven't heard from her in days." Then, just as they began to think she might return, an envelope arrived. It was from Zila's lawyer. Inside was a neatly folded letter written in simple, clear words. It stated that all assets they once believed they could use or control, every piece of land, every bank account, every investment, was now permanently under Zila's name. Not a single thing was left for them to touch. Chemo's hands shook as he read it. Bina sat frozen, her mouth open, her mind replaying every moment she had underestimated Zella. All the years they had smiled in her face, while quietly planning to use her resources for themselves, had led to this moment, when her absence and her silence spoke louder than any argument. The house felt colder, the air heavier, and for the first time in years, their smiles were gone. Without Zella's money holding everything together, Chemo's business began to fall apart faster than anyone expected. Bills piled up, suppliers stopped calling, and clients moved on. Within months, the shop that once made him feel so important was gone. Bina tried to keep up appearances, dressing nicely and smiling for the neighbors. But without Zella's generosity funding her lifestyle, the shine quickly faded. The friends she once bragged to stopped visiting, and the invitations to parties disappeared. People in the neighborhood who once envied them now whispered and laughed. The same people they had treated as less now avoided their eyes, or worse, pitied them. Pride was hard to swallow, and both Chemo and Bina were choking on it. Every day was a reminder that their comfort had never been built on their own efforts. It had been built on Zella's kindness, the very kindness they had mocked. While they scrambled to survive, Zella's life was nothing like theirs. She had taken her inheritance and moved far away to a small coastal town where the air smelled of salt and fresh beginnings. Her new home was simple but beautiful, with wide windows that let the sunlight in every morning. She spent her days working on small investments, buying properties, and supporting local businesses. Each decision she made brought her quiet success, the kind that didn't need to be shown off. Every morning, she woke up to the sound of waves rolling onto the shore. There were no bitter voices, no mocking laughter, just peace. She would sit with a cup of tea, watching fishermen set out in their boats, and smile at the life she had built for herself. She no longer needed to prove anything to anyone, especially not to people who had only valued her when she was useful to them. Kimo and Bina heard bits and pieces about her new life through gossip. Someone mentioned she had bought land near the water. Another said she was running a small but successful business. Each rumor stung, not just because Zella was doing well, but because she was doing it without them. The tables had truly turned. Where once they had felt powerful and in control, they now struggled with bills, debts, and fading reputation. Where once Zella had been the one sitting silently in their shadow, she now lived freely in the sunlight. And the most painful part for Kimo and Bina, Zella never came back to explain, to argue, or to seek revenge. She didn't need to. Her happiness was the loudest answer she could give, and it was clear they would never be a part of it again. Years later, Zella was sitting at her small balcony by the coast, enjoying her morning tea, when a mutual friend stopped by for a visit. They chatted casually until the friend mentioned, almost in passing, that Kimo and Bina were now living in a cramped, run-down apartment in the city. They were months behind on rent, and the once proud couple who had loved to show off now avoided people to hide their struggles. Zella didn't react with shock or pity. She simply smiled, took a slow sip of her tea, and let the words drift away with the sea breeze. She remembered the day she had overheard them laughing about her stupidity, how they had thought they were smarter, better, untouchable. But now, looking back, she realized the only foolish thing she had ever done was believe they deserved her love, trust, and place in her life. That morning, as the waves rolled gently against the shore, Zella felt lighter than ever, knowing she had the last laugh without needing to say a single word. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is no revenge at all, just living well. If you believe in letting karma do the talking, share this story.